Please like, share, and subscribe to Vanessa Pretty Vibes LLC podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we get started, we are talking about, this case is about Ms. Ruby McCollum. So it's going to be a repeat of the different characters that play a role in her story. A Florida town is left shaken after a doctor was unalive in 1952. This story is the true story of the late Ruby McCollum. Please excuse me if I mispronounce some names in this story, if I pronounce some names wrong. Born Ruby Jackson on August 31st, 1909, in Zumba, Florida, a small farming town just north of Ocala. Her parents scrapped together a living to support the large family into which she was born. Around 1931, she met and married Sam McCollum, and the couple moved to Live Oaks to make a start selling numbers, or baleta, or shall I say in the South, we said running numbers. As the gaming was called. They became rich, eventually purchasing several hundred acres of good farmland. They had 2 children together and lived in the finest black home in Live Oak. All appeared well for the couple, but inside the home, there were problems. Sam had taken up with a high yellow school teacher in Tampa and was spending a lot of time on the road, supposedly on Baleta's business. Ruby was devastated. Sam's cheating led her to take up an affair with Dr. Leroy C. Adams, the town's most prominent white doctor. Dr. Adams had just won a primary election for a seat in the state Senate and was expected to win easily in the general election. The doctor was also heavily involved in the Baleta's business with Sam and Ruby. A very large sum of Baleta's money was passed between them. Dr. Adams was rich and getting richer. Since the start of health insurance plans such as Blue Cross and Blue Shield, introduced in the late 1940s, Dr. Adams and many other doctors, especially in the small town, made their fortune offering services to people who previously could not pay their medical bills. Dr. Adams was called the shot doctor. Ruby became a shot fiend. Over time, she became addicted to the shots administered by Dr. Adams. Ruby and Dr. Adams became involved in a sexual relationship. There is no claim that Ruby was, the R word by Adams. In her state of mind at the time, she was vulnerable. Her husband had a tendency to embarrass her. She was rich and more educated than the woman Sam had taken up with. She was sexually neglected, and Adams was the ticket out of her misery. According to her own lawyer, Ruby's ego needed to be managed. Dr. Adams was a big shot headed for the governor's chair. When he extended an examination in her upstairs bedroom, Ruby became pregnant by the doctor, and when the baby was the spitting image of the doctor, Sam went into a rage. Her lawyer explained Sam took it hard. He threatened to unalive her, and no doubt there would have been an unaliving right there, except that they reached some sort of adjustment for the business reason. All three of them were in the Bolitas business. The doc had Ruby, Sam had the school teacher, and Sam had Ruby operating a home and a family together. By the summer of 1952, it was clear that Ruby, now 40 years old and carrying Dr. Adams' second child, had mental problems. Dr. Adams sent her to 3 psychiatrists and began to take virtual control of Ruby's life as she went into madness and depression. After the trial, her attorney explained the doc put her on dope. Ruby had lost Sam, and what had she gained? The doctor beat her up, extorted money from her, got her pregnant again, and then more, moved more and more, began to neglect her as he moved toward the governor's chair. Dr. Adams would not hear of aborting the pregnancy. He told Ruby, "You know I want all of my babies." Both Sam and Dr. Adams were abusive to Ruby. She reported to her lawyer, Mr. McGriff, "I was just caught between the two GUNS." You know what that means? Either the doctor or Sam was gonna unalive me. Both of them threatening me all the time. And the doctor hitting me across the face with his fist. What could I do? It all came to a head on the morning of Sunday, August 3rd, 1952. Ruby put on a brown dress, put her 2 small children into the back seat of the car, and drove downtown to the doctor's office in the Parsley building. Ruby used the colored entrance entering from the alley and walked past colored patients who were waiting to be seen. She confronted the doctor. Witnesses would later testify that Ruby pulled her .32 caliber Smith & Wesson nickel-plated pistol and fired 3 shots into the doctor. After he fell, she pumped more into his body. The waiting colored patients fled the doctor's office as Ruby took a few minutes to collect herself. She then walked calmly to her 1951 blue two-tone Chrysler, made sure her 2 small children in the back seat were all right, then drove home. Within an hour, every police in the Suwannee County Sheriff's Office encircled the McCollum's home. By sundown the next day, practically every adult in Florida, black and white, who could read and write, knew her name. Later, reporters said the confirmation was over and the bill that they were arguing about, was old. Ruby McCollum was nobody's maid. She was the richest black woman in the county, and now she had unalived the town's white doctor. The second pregnancy, depression, and mental illness led her to the shooting. A second white baby would have driven Sam over the edge. Ruby unalived the Dr. Adams because he would not allow her to abort her pregnancy with his second child. The abortion would have solved the dilemma she was facing. When she went into the office that Sunday morning, she likely intended to unalive Adams. A motion for a change based upon massive local media coverage above the case was submitted by her lawyers. Ruby was not defenseless. She had two expensive white lawyers from Jacksonville, Frank T. Cannon and P. Guy Cruz, defending her, and a colored attorney, Rilla Ford McGriffin, who stayed in the background because his presence in court would have created a disturbance. They argued that Ruby could not get a fair trial. Not that it's up to the 20 Florida highway patrol units were necessary to protect Ruby from mob violence. The motion was denied. So on November 18th, 1952, jury selections began in a trial that had captured national attention. Nothing like it had ever been seen before in Florida, and likely not in the South. A black woman on trial for the murder of her rich white lover. The public face which the prosecution advised was that Ruby's motive for the killing, unaliving, was a disputed medical bill. This is hardly so, since Ruby McCollum had plenty of money to pay her bills. In the South at that time, sexual relationships between white men and black women was a taboo subject. The McCollum case brought this issue into the public eye. For the defense, the sexual relationship was crucial to understanding McCollum's motion. When a black nurse, Thelma Curry, who worked for the Dr. Adams, tried to testify about an argument she overheard between Adams and McCollum a few days before the murder, she was jerked from the stand by the prosecution. During Ruby's trial, her lawyers tried to describe the affair, but were met with a storm of obligations from the prosecutor. Ultimately, her lawyers were not allowed to bring in anything about the affair other than that Ruby submitted herself to the doctor when her husband was not at home. When Ruby took the stand to explain what happened and why she unalived the doctor, the state would not allow her to do so. Ruby was allowed to describe how in about 1948, during the extended absence of her husband, she had in her home submitted to the doctor. When her husband was not at home, When Ruby took the stand to explain what happened and why she unalived the doctor, she was allowed to state that her younger child was his. Yet 38 times Frank Cannon attempted to create the opportunity for Ruby to tell her whole story, and this explained what was her motive. 38 times she stated objective, and 38 times Judge Adams, now this judge is not related to the doctor, although they have the same last name, is what they stated, sustained those objections. On December 17, 1952, an all-white, all-male jury was sworn in to determine Ruby McCollum's fate. The defense objected to the racial composure of the jury. The objection was overruled. On December 20th, 1952, at 11:30 a.m., the case went to jury. The jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder at 2:25 p.m. On January 17th, 1952, court sentencing of Ruby McCollum, at which time the court read the following. A jury having found you, Ruby McCollum, guilty of murder in the first degree, the court objects you to be guilty of murder in the first degree. It is the judgment of the court and the sentence of the law that you, Ruby McCollum, for your said offense, do be remanded to the custody of the sheriffs of Swayanee County, Florida, to be by him be safely kept in the common jail of said county until the government of the state of Florida shall have issued his death warrant for your execution, and that offer ensure of the warrant for your execution by the governor, you shall be conveyed to the state prison farm of Rafford, Florida, there to be safely kept there until such time as the governor of the state of Florida may in his said warrant of its design, and that at the time so designed, said the superintendent of state prison or one of his authority deputies shall cause to pass through your body a current of electricity of intention to cause your immediate death, and shall continue such current until you are unalive, and may God have mercy upon your soul. So in the end, I think what they did was they tried to give her death, death row. On July 20th, 1954, the Florida Supreme Court reversed the conviction of Ruby McCollum based upon the fact that the trial judge did not attempt the viewing of the crime scene within the jury. The court ordered a new trial, but Ruby's lawyer argued that either client was too mentally ill to assist in her defense in a second trial. So, on September 24th, 1954, the court declared her to be mentally ill and ordered her to be confined at the Florida State Mental Hospital at Chattahoochee. This became her home until she was released to her family in 1974. Ruby was placed in foster care in Ocala near Silver Springs. She died of a stroke on May 23rd, 1992, at the age of 82. Some things that we left out that I am going to address. What happened to Sam McCollum? So Sam McCollum died of a heart attack after his wife unalived Dr. Adams. Loretta McCollum, the alleged child of Dr. Adams, and Ruby lived in New Jersey and also declined to speak with them. In fact, no one in the family wanted to open up at first. How many kids did Ruby McCollum have? They had 3 children together. Their names as follows: Sam Jr., Sandra, and Kay. This is a true story. And I did a clipping of the photos they had on file. Let's see. This was Miss Ruby McCollins. She was known as the richest colored woman in their county. This was also Miss Ruby. This was Miss Ruby, and this was Dr. Adams. This was also in one of the movies. She also had a movie. Plenty of stories out here about Miss Ruby. I actually collected what I could about her amazing story. And I do say amazing because for her to go through what she went through was amazing. It was sad, depressing. The Florida State Mental Hospital Women's Wing. So can you just imagine a sad life, just sad, you know? This was the Florida death row before they overturned it. This was Miss Ruby McCollins entering court, and this was the sheriff that walked her in. So they did a sketch image of Miss Ruby McCollins and Adams. This was their, I want to say, first story, which was, I want to say this was Miss Loretta, in my opinion. I'm not sure. Of course, back then they did the news articles of, in the newspaper. This was Miss Ruby's daughter. And I guess they was worried about what was going to happen to her, who was going to get her, or whatever. And of course, at the time, Sam took his girls, his kids, to his sister house or cousin house in New York, where he left them. He actually went somewhere, I think back home or whatever, like he got a place there in New York, I want to say. And he took the money that, because he went back to Live Oak, got all the money out of the home of Ruby McCollins out the safe. And that's when him and the girls, they got on the road, went to New York. And he dropped them off to, I think, his cousin's house or a family member. And he went somewhere, I guess to his cousin's house. And the next day, they found him unalive. They say that he committed, and also somebody else said, it was rumored that, somebody unalived him because, what happened to the money and stuff. So it's like a whole bunch of stories out here about that. But I gathered what I could from different news clippings, different stories, and put this together. Also, this was something that, the definition of the Belita, which is to us, and, back in the South, we call this running numbers. So I think everywhere have their own, saying of wording different things. But this is what I came up with. This was also the McCollins grand home, where they located it at, from how it looked now. This was this was Sam's, and which is Miss Ruby late husband. This is the burial gravesite of Miss Ruby McCollum. Says she died in 1992. Is that yeah? Is that yeah? 1992. This is Sam. This is Dr. Adams. And somebody wrote a book about this. They got plenty of stories about her life and what happened, you know. So I want to say this: fly high, Miss Ruby. You didn't deserve what you went through. This could actually be a cruel world out here. And I wish it would have been different. I really do. Um, And also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos and ride-alongs. Also, don't forget to view my other videos. It's more videos to come. I do have badges, super stickers. It's up to you if that's what you want to do. I appreciate every view, every like. Please leave a comment down to let me know what do you think about this story.